Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Gotham Sound and Communications, gothamsound.tv. Today, I am here with the sound department from Outlast, the new Netflix show. We've got Aaron Chandler and Joe Pfeil. Thanks for being here, guys. So today, we're going to talk about the show itself, how you prepared everything. But before we do that, let's watch a clip about the show so we all have a sense of what's going on. Jared, roll the clip, please.
That's a bear. Bear's nearby.
Be on the lookout.
Welcome to Outlast, where 16 lone wolves put their survival skills to the test.
It was really roughing it.
With only one rule to win, you have to finish as part of a team.
Pull it tight and then start wrapping it.
Or you go home with nothing.
I am in starvation mode.
This is unresponsive.
Okay, great. Rugged, obviously, Alaskan wilderness. So, Aaron, you were the sound supervisor on this.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about how the job came about, what the requirements were, and then, how you decided to tackle this.
Sure. I did a show called Alaska: The Last Frontier with the showrunners, over a decade ago. And stayed in touch over the years and kind of started singing the praises of Zaxcom to them many years ago. And we kind of fell out of touch. And then about 2 years ago, Brian Mandel got back in touch with me and was like, hey, how about that Zaxcom? And I, from there, just started kind of telling him what was possible with the Zaxcom system, recording transmitters, wireless time code, telemetry, So after that, he started saying, okay, well, what's your availability? And from there, I basically just started talking to them about exactly what were their intentions for the cast, what they thought the gear was going to go through. I think basically the geography of southern Alaska started coming into that conversation. There's going to be tons of water involved in this show. Mm-hmm. And from that point, I started thinking about, okay, this isn't so much a technically demanding show. This is a much more, how am I going to keep the gear working the entire show?
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the show itself. So how would you describe the show using other reality shows?
Sure. I've always thought of it as basically Alone meets Survivor. Mm-hmm. So the format of the show is essentially team-based, where there are squads of people who are trying to survive in extreme conditions with winter coming.
And so, Joe, you're a native Alaskan. So you how far away did you grow up from where you were filming?
Maybe 500 or something miles. Same part of Alaska, though, on the water.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, the conditions that were out there and what you expected going into this.
When Peter Schneider told me about this job and described the most dense bear-infested area on the planet, I was like, no, that's Kodiak, Alaska. He's like, nope, it's actually this spot, and they're going to shoot a show. I said, good luck with that. I looked it up, and the rain is something like 85% of the time it rains. Mm-hmm. And the temperatures were going to come all the way down into, it snowed. So I was pretty excited about it. It was just like a lot of what I've done before. So the job, like he was saying, was technically kind of easy. Mm-hmm. It was the logistics of schlepping gear through boat to river to mud and not ruining anything.
Well, let's go to this picture real quick, because I do like this picture. It was just released in a Zaxcom newsletter. Joe, you look so much happier than Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just trying to accentuate my highlight there.
Good job.
Yeah.
This was day one, right?
Sure. Yeah. This was the Joe living it up and me saying, okay, are we going to make it?
There was a lot of stress before this show started. It was delayed by at least, I think, 6 days. So we had a lot of time to prep our gear for the inevitable rain. But the logistics of this were really heavy.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it didn't feel like a bag show at all. I know we were wearing the bags right here in this photo, but this was the initial drop of the cast where they were dropped off by helicopter into the surroundings. And yeah, obviously we had to carry the gear around on us somehow. So that's how. Before
there was any format, there was a lot of carry everything with you everywhere you go. And then it rains and you don't have tents. We'll get to the tents and the rain.
All right. So given the physical challenges, let's talk about how you decided to tackle this technically. So how many cast members did you start with, and how were things divided? And also, how big was your team?
There were 16 cast. At some point they were talking about even more, but I think it got winnowed down to 16. We started the show with 20 transmitters, and I think we ended the show with 19 transmitters. But after that, there were 3 sound people.
Given the specs of the show, the environmental challenges, what did you decide to do technically?
So yeah, that was in those initial conversations with Brian Mandel, who was one of the showrunners. I was basically definitely saying, hey, recording transmitters are really going to be the only way to do this. And so a lot of that planning is what I'm most proud of with this show in particular, because we had to make all of the really important choices before the gear left New York. And it felt really good. As I said, in that picture, I was still worried at that point. Is everything going to hold together? Is this Millennium Falcon going to actually make it through the finish line? Yeah. And I couldn't be more happy about all of those choices and everything we brought together to get on the show. So the way we did it was with ZMT-X's, Novas. We had ERXs on all the cameras. We had QRX 200s on the cameras as well. And
ERX is for time code, QRX is for audio.
Sure.
So you were sending camera link to the cameras, is that right?
And we had camera links with the Novas as well. We had URXs, which for me personally and for Brandon and Joe, we use the URXs more than we use the Novas a lot of times, because the Novas were really primarily there to provide the primary, ZaxNet for everything. And what you were asking about earlier too, I really approached this problem of doing sound in very cold environments. That was my first thought. I was like, okay, we're going to be in Alaska. It's going to get really cold. That's going to be the biggest limiting factor here. So I built everything, architecturally speaking, from a battery life perspective. That's why we went with the smart batteries for the Novas, always having 2, in there as well, and then the ZMT-X's, which are unparalleled in battery life.
Right, and you mentioned when we were talking before that you never rolled out, or you never had a battery die before you were done filming.
We didn't have a single transmitter die, and I brought a prop. So this is what the transmitters would live inside of. So each cast member would wear this around their chest, under their jacket, like this. Aaron used a soldering iron to melt a little passageway for the wire, so it was a very, very tight seal. And then the mic cable would run out to the jacket.
What was particularly great about these, and why we chose these particular aqua packs versus the ones that are intended for wireless transmitters, is that with the ZMT-X, these when they're worn but with the lanyard, it allows for a vertical orientation of the transmitter itself, so that the antenna was obviously vertical and would function much more well.
So let's get back to talking about battery life. So how long were the days, and how long was the transmitter running?
Well, I believe the transmitters were running for about 52 days.
Okay.
The entire show we were rolling on our cast, and we would change the BT100 batteries twice a day, essentially. Once when we came in, which, we should get to that at some point too. Getting into, it was
So
quite
the adventures of starting our day.
Okay.
quite the arduous journey.
So in the small town of Hoona, Alaska, a tiny island near Juneau.
Actually, before we get into the adventures of starting your day, let's get into the adventures of just getting there from New York, right?
Yeah.
So you board the plane at airport. Then what happens?
Well, I guess we flew into Juneau, and then we had to take a seaplane to Hoona. And then
So Hoona's small.
yeah,
It's very off
no
the
roads
path.
to Hoona, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how far was where you were filming from Hoona, or was that in Hoona? And how big is Hoona? I've never heard of Hoona.
Hoona's a tiny community, and we were put up in, I'll call it lodging, and we would every morning travel to this tiny production office in this tiny
The
town.
cast wasn't the only one surviving. That's what Joe's trying to say.
We would build every morning, power everything up. One Nova hands time code to the other Novas, hands time code to every camera, everything just wireless. Then we'd pack our gear on a pickup truck and drive 60 seconds away to the dock. Go down.
We would pack it in one of these.
Yes.
We brought props. This is
Backpack.
just a dry bag, essentially, but this will fit a Nova plus a run bag in it, and keep it dry for the journey, which Joe will tell you about now.
So we'd pack everything up. You don't know if it's going to rain, but it's always going to rain. So pack everything up in a truck, bring it down to the docks, put it on three boats or two boats? The
Two medium-sized boats. Yeah.
Two medium-sized boats takes the whole crew out to the mothership that lives on anchor, and it's a support ship where at least one of the two executives lived the whole time.
Yeah,
Lived the whole time.
Yeah.
The head of security of the Bear Guards, which we'll get to, was based out of there, so there's always medical available. And the whole crew would then get on 3 small boats to travel to the camps, which you needed to be on small boats because it's in such shallow water. You need to take a skiff. Sometimes the water got so shallow, you just go dry and have to walk. And
which is just all part of our day was walking through water. Like you couldn't get off the boat without
you're just jumping
putting your
in the
foot
water.
in water.
And so, what are you wearing? I mean, are you going to wear sneakers like this and shorts, or what? I mean, obviously in this picture you're not wearing that, but tell us about getting ready for your day.
I had water wings, and really, it was great.
Oh, duck floaty.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, preparing for water was my favorite part of this whole job because I grew up commercial fishing, and that mostly involves being uncomfortable and trying to change that. And this whole job was, it's going to rain, and you're going to be schlepping gear up and down mud banks, and it's very physical. So we premeditated as much as we could about being comfortable and having the right footwear and having the right everything. And it was really fun because it was so bad out there. And then you see all these camera operators from California show up, and they're like wearing jeans, and you're just getting ready for it to be, a thunderstorm.
And so, let's talk about who you're wearing in this picture or what you're wearing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, what are you wearing? Is it you're not wearing jeans, you're not wearing sneakers, you're wearing.
This is one of the few days that are beautiful and ideal. Most of the time, you have a rain jacket and rain pants. And then when you don't, you probably should have it close by because the weather will ideally or just usually flip.
Yeah.
I can go over my wardrobe. So I had 2 pairs of socks on, muck boots on. let's see, 3 pairs of pants, essentially. So long underwear, maybe even these pants I'm wearing right now were under the rain pants. I had a t-shirt on, another button-down shirt on over that, and then the vest, which is also pictured there, as well as the down over that. And when it was raining, which was almost every day, I had another raincoat that went over that as well.
Wow.
Took about
It got cold.
10 to 15 minutes to get it on.
Just to get
every
ready.
day. Yeah. It's quite the utility suit.
So why don't we shift gears a little bit and let's take a look at some of the slides that you brought and have some storytelling time.
So you can tell by this, when this show started, we were all very excited.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just one person excited in that frame. I'm just going to throw that out there.
This is our production office where we prepped gear every morning.
Yeah, this is basically all of the,
Every morning,
our recorders.
all the
and
Novas
of
are
our
powered
stuff.
up.
Yeah.
So is that 5 Novas there?
5 Novas.
Mhm.
Normally 4 with one that was available that during an auxiliary thing could be pulled into use.
Yeah, one of the points that I didn't touch on earlier about the whole planning stages was that I really, really made it a point to, in the whole budgetary discussions, to say, hey, we need to have spares. We need to have spares of everything at every camp all the time. So there were 4 camps, so we had 5 Novas. And there was generally 4 people at a camp, so we would have 5 transmitters there. So there was always spare equipment in place at these positions when we needed it. And that felt glorious whenever the producers were like, oh, by the way, we got a cast member coming back. And I'm like, cool, we got them.
Got it. It's
there. It's waiting for them. So yeah, this is our 5 Novas and lots of QRXs there. And
So we've got the equipment laid out here.
these are our money makers. This is what recorded essentially the whole show. These were our primary, this was the primary audio. That is all the aqua packs that the cast wore for the entire show.
And so ZMTXs for transmission and recording, what were the lavs that you used?
Mainly 6060s,
Okay.
DPA 6060s.
Mhm.
I think we had some 4063s just to round it out. But yeah, it was mainly 6060s, which were amazing. Amazing.
people screaming, people whispering, and more importantly, rain, constant rain.
Yeah.
And these mics exposed on the exterior of jackets.
Yeah. We actually have a picture of the mic element rig itself. We'll get to it in a minute. This is essentially the, actually, Joe, you spearheaded this waterproofing.
So
maybe-
because we had an incredible amount of prep time, we waterproofed everything as much as possible. So this is Gorilla Tape, a flame, and a knife, and a lot of time. And everything.
Every port we really weren't using.
Got covered.
Yeah.
Wow.
What we don't have good photos of is the custom camera covers. Every camera had a plastic Velcro.
Roland, if you're
gaff
out
tape.
there, thanks, man. We couldn't have done it without you.
Everything made from scratch. And somehow, and that means you've got a QRX and an ERX on camera. You have to get to the ERX every day to throw batteries in it. That means the camera ops also have to get in there, so you have to be able to get into this thing every day. And through so much rain, it didn't get destroyed. So we're very impressed, happy.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that there was not that many things damaged, which is surprising given the.
He's got the loss and damage to prove it.
So essentially, this was the skeleton of the lavs that everyone wore. A Bumblebee DPA 6060 mount, which I swear by. I don't think there's a better mount on the market for the 6060. We took safety pins.
Huge fan of safety pins. Massive.
Yeah.
I
Don't think there's a better
I do not agree with
thing
you.
on the market for
Yeah.
those. Yeah. And poked them through. And then we took top stick to go around the top of that.
So that means around the whole body,
Mhm.
so around the safety pins like this.
Not the
half-inch
mic
strip.
element itself, just around the body of it. And then we took a ride coat over cover and
Over the top.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Got it. Okay.
And then 2 points of failure for falling off, which is ideal.
Yeah. Mounting these on waterproof Gore-Tex jackets in a way not to compromise the jacket's waterproof ability, which is really important for people living outside. It was really difficult to get this on. I think it would take 2 to 4 minutes maybe to rig somebody up with this. But we almost never had to change it because the mic was just a really good rig, so we didn't need to change it.
I think the only thing that was problematic toward the end was the overcovers would come off.
Uh-huh.
But the mount itself was very robust. I think that's your rig from
Yep, this
when
is
you
the
went
very
back
beginning
to
of
Juneau,
the show.
right?
We
Yep.
started the show in Juneau with interviews of the whole cast.
Got it. Okay, so I see some bow ties. We got the camera link, the
So-
Nova.
So this is A camp. This is how you spend your day. A camp was an experience.
Uh-huh.
The water would come up to where you are, sometimes above where you are, so you have to move everything you've got.
Yeah, the water was insane there.
So
Perfect.
we hugged a propane heater as it got chilly.
Uh-huh. And we say chilly, what kind of weather conditions are we talking about?
Towards the end of the show, it snowed. So
Yeah,
so
it was
So 30s.
got down to the 30s, which is
20s, and then it kind of hovered in between 20s and 30s for
which
the whole
with
show.
rain is,
Not-
is a lot.
yeah.
Not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Here's me showing off how to destroy a Nova.
Well, no, actually.
Somehow not. That's just someplace in Huna.
Yeah, that's Huna.
Okay.
There's Aaron in Huna.
I think that's towards the very end of the shoot. I can't even remember.
You can tell because he's happy.
Ah,
yeah.
interesting. The closer you got
You
to
can
the
tell
end.
by the faces.
The
you
finish
see-
line was in sight.
Just look at this is towards the beginning of the shoot.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
This is the first day.
Mm-hmm.
So this shows, it's
Native
at least
Alaskan in his element.
30,
with
30
plus
something
URX.
degrees.
And that is some ice and snow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was towards the end of the show. It got pretty serious.
So this is a great picture because the way that we actually took the equipment to set, if you will, every day was from the PO, and Joe had said how we basically put it in a pickup truck. The pickup truck drove it to the docks. We got onto a medium-sized boat. We went to a big boat, which was kind of the control center, and then we took
And you're
these
handing
boats.
gear.
So this is the small boat.
This is the small
skiff.
boat.
Uh-huh. Okay.
You're handing gear first from PO into the back of a truck, from the truck onto these on the dock, then onto the medium boats, from the medium boats over rails onto a big boat, don't drop it in the water,
Mm-hmm.
then from the big boat over rails into a skiff, don't drop it in the water,
Mm-hmm.
and then from a skiff, jump in the water with it, don't drop it in the water.
Uh-huh.
So the whole show was a bunch of don't drop it in the water.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of camera equipment just being handed in between boat rails.
And how long would it take you to get to set on with that planes, trains, and automobiles?
Hour and a
Yeah, 45 to an hour.
Got it.
depending.
So just to get to work.
Yeah.
Just to get the equipment to where
Towards-
it needed to be.
Towards the end of the show, when it started to get chilly and snowy, we couldn't even get to the production office because we're all supposed to hop in this little van and get a ride 2 minutes away to the production office. No one could go anywhere.
The
So we
roads
all
were
had
not
to-
passable.
We had to walk. We had to slide. Anyways, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep going here.
Yeah, this is more of the boat life.
Faces of misery and coldness.
Life
Yeah.
on the skiff.
Happiness. Everyone's happiness.
Yeah, I think that was a going home at the end of the day.
Oh, that's not one of our custom plastic rigs.
Okay, so once we got the gear there, we basically divided our sound people into two sides of the river. That was because there were 4 camps. And
4 camps, 3 sound people.
yeah, we had to do some creative deputizing. This is the orientation of all of the camps for Outlast. So there were 4 camps of 4 people, and they were on, obviously, 2 sides of a river. So my day started off with essentially checking in on every camp. So I would start at B, make my way to A, which was being escorted by a person with a rifle.
A bear guard.
Yeah.
Bear guard. Aha, yes.
As one will.
And that walk would take 30 minutes or so. And then from there, I would go to Alpha and check in on Alpha, which was, by the end of it, I almost lost a boot because the mud was so intense there. Then crossing the river, which took logistics on this, especially with Alaska and the tides and all the boats that were involved, really were intense. So I would check in, I would call in to be driven across the river, dropped off at Delta, check in on Delta, head to Charlie with another bear guard. And then that bear guard would generally escort me out, and then I would wind up taking another skiff all the way back to control and check in with the higher ups, and that would be half of my day.
And then you would come back to set for more
Yeah.
fun? Uh-huh.
Oh, sure. And then, basically go to whatever side of the river needed the most support for that day. So yeah, it was again, the challenges of this show weren't exactly technical in nature. They were more about just surviving, getting through to each cast member.
Not getting hurt.
Yeah, not getting hurt and not dropping micro SD cards into 6 inches of mud.
Let's come back to that, because I also want to know, Joe, where were you on this diagram?
So Brandon, the other sound mixer, and I.
Oh, hi, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Miss you, bud.
We basically split the camps, and we deputized a producer to be his own sound person for his camp because there were only 3 sound mixers, which it's a good thing he was a very fast learner because he was able to run his camp. So we basically worked half the show in one camp, then half the show in another camp, and we would walk you back and forth to Aaron. Aaron would say, "Hey, come check out this camp, do this camp." We would just share the job.
Yeah. Each one of them would wind up being on the other side of the river, essentially. Switch sides of the river, and then fortuitously, the camps got winnowed down pretty quickly within the show, so the lack of sound personnel wasn't that big of a problem. So yeah, and then they would kind of alternate between camps as well.
Something I think we needed to give context on when Aaron was talking about being escorted by a bear guard. So this area has more brown bears than most areas, supposedly more than any other area.
Okay.
I haven't checked. And we were required to have a bear guard chaperone us anywhere we go. You're not allowed to be by yourself. And so for Aaron to get anywhere, he also had to find a bear guard who has a VHF walkie to talk to the skiff guys, to talk to another bear guard. Everything had to go through these bear guards. So
My first supervised 10-100, let me tell you.
So basically, it's like security or an armed guard, but for bears.
yeah.
Yeah. And were bears, I mean, obviously they were there, but did it ever become a problem while you were filming?
No, they were good sports.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah.
Smokey stayed out of the way.
Mhm.
Great. So let's circle back to the comment you made about the micro SD cards and dropping that in the mud. So you had the Nova, or you had 5 Novas, and they were rolling, but they were not your primary media. So tell us a little bit about managing the media and how
Sure.
how that was all done.
I mean, they were essential in the process, and you can't do it without it. Managing the media, it was intense. Most of these places, there wasn't a place where we could sit down, and we certainly, towards the end of the show, we had a little bit more infrastructure at the camps. But in the beginning, when it was most difficult, there wasn't a place, there wasn't a table, there wasn't chairs. Like,
You need to walk up to somebody who just woke up in a tarp and unzip the jacket, open up an aqua pack, open up a transmitter, change the battery, pull out the micro SD card, not drop it.
right.
what would you
Not
put it
mix
in?
it up with your fresh
We
media.
had tiny cases for the cards.
Yeah,
And then you
CF
pull
card
out another
cases.
card that says this is a fresh card that's going in, put that in, change your mode to transmit, whereas overnight it was record only to save battery life.
Yeah. And we would use a color code system, which was great because some of us were colorblind, and
Some of you still are?
still are, turns out. And so we use silver, gold, and blaze orange,
We had
And-
advanced marker system of
Sure.
organization.
which was almost the only way in a lot of these situations where it gets very confusing when you're taking the media out of a transmitter
It's dark.
while you're standing and it's raining
And you're
in 6
literally-
inches
you're
of
s-
mud.
You're squatting with somebody, getting their stuff.
Right.
You have nowhere to put anything.
Yeah,
So it-
I had a tweaker in the jaw, because in order to get the card out, you have to use a screwdriver to kind of gently push it. I didn't grow out my disco coke nail for that show, but
we have a lot of opportunities
next
to
time.
drop these cards into the
that's
mud.
definitely a season 2. So like Joe just said, there was just so much opportunity to lose a card. So having that, I had a fresh media zipper pocket and a shot media zipper pocket. It was a lot of systems there.
And how many SD cards were you managing? And what size did you use?
We used 4 gigabytes because they were the fastest to reformat, and since we were changing them every 12 hours anyway,
matters.
the capacity wasn't a huge deal. And I think we wound up getting the media there turned out to be a little bit more of a challenge. So in the beginning of the show, we definitely were very short on media. But we made it happen. I think, what was the question again?
I think I said, how many micro SD cards did you have in rotation?
Not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Joe's not
That's
wrong.
the number.
Yeah.
Aaron spent a lot of his day moving cards back and forth because we had not enough until we got enough.
And yeah, I think that the term used was penny wise, pound foolish in the beginning.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that.
We were talking about things we learned about things we learned from this experience, and something I would learn is have all of the media you need.
Don't let that be a limiting
Don't let that,
factor.
like this show was literally based off of these cards. It was the infrastructure of the time code of everything. And he was fighting to get what he needed.
So let's talk about time code and the IFB, because you did mention IFB voting and how that worked, and how did you implement that, and what you said a couple of stories about how it was seamless, but let's just talk a little bit about how you did that.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of the Nova is if you've got a Zaxnet transmitter built in, and so you turn one Nova into a primary clock and then jam the other Novas from that, and then...
And that's all by Zaxnet as well.
No, we did that with a cable. That was the only time we actually did something difficult. And
Oh,
old
right.
school.
We didn't turn it into receive mode.
Okay.
So in the morning we would turn one on, cable the others, and
I
then,
see.
and then fancy from there on.
Sure.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The beauty of that system is that once Zaxnet is up and on in the air, there would be many occasions where a field trip was happening where there would be one single camera person with one single cast member, and they'd have a URX-50, and they'd hear a boat going by, and then be watching their URX-50 and watch the time code come in from the transmitter itself. Like the transmitter would grab the code at great distance, and it was pretty amazing in that way to see Zaxnet at its peak.
Such a complex system, everything held together by time code, all these individual recorders.
Right.
And yet it
exactly.
was the simplest part of the whole.
Right. It was, it
you
wasn't
put
much
that-
of a thought.
You turn on an ERX that's already on the camera, that receives time code via Zaxnet. You're done. That's it.
And it just worked.
Just works.
And it just worked. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's keep going through this slideshow here and see what else we have.
That was my rig for, just an idea of the conditions and how close the water was.
Wet.
And yeah.
It looks like a swamp.
Yep. That's Alpha Camp.
Alpha Camp was not a comfortable place to be.
No.
You're basically living in a river.
Right.
So it was fun. It was fun.
That is Brandon Johnson in the background there in the orange, living his best life. Actually, and that's a rifle that was on the rock there.
So you can tell our bear
Is that a
guard
bear
is
guard
close
rifle?
by.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
Our bear guards were superheroes. They were really cool. Very
And-
helpful.
And this is bear guard footprints.
No.
So we have a shot that didn't make it in, but a walkie-talkie right by some bear paws, footsteps, just to show
Sorry,
you.
no bananas
So-
or any scaling
So
devices
pretend
in this
that this
shot.
has
Yeah.
context.
This was taken about 20 yards away from Charlie Camp. So
They were there.
They were there.
they were always there, always watching. Here's our L&D. As I had said, we lost one transmitter. There was one URX-50 that went in the drink when a producer went in the drink, and it wasn't sealed in the Aquapack. And the rest of it was mainly, I know the lavs are listed there, but those were just rewires on the connectors. So I don't think we actually lost a mic element at all, and some cables. So I was really happy, and the line producer was also really happy with this L&D.
Yeah, they were probably pleasantly surprised.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And yeah, why don't you show us the waterproofing rig that you have for the URX 50s?
So as we said that you didn't need to wear the Nova all day. So for each camp that has 4 participants wearing mics, that would all be received into a Nova, mixed. The producer and sound person are both wearing URXs in these waterproof little pouches with earbuds. Fold this up, wear it around your waist, or And so with this, you could tune into any transmitter individually to spot check, or tune into the sound bag to hear the mix. So we wore these all day long and almost never needed to directly wear the Nova, which is extremely nice. Just hang the Nova on a tree.
Great.
Advanced technique.
Advanced techniques. All right. So do you have more slides you'd like to share? Or?
Yeah, just some pretty pictures. Actually, leave it there, Joe, because that's a perfect example of
Oh, the tide.
what the tide would do, and also where our feet were all day long.
Yeah, a couple hours later, you're underwater in this
Yeah, that's
same
the
spot.
river. Yeah.
The tides are some of the strongest in the entire North America in this area, so it's a lot of change.
Right.
So the logistics of getting anywhere were, again, super difficult, more difficult than hitting record.
And
Oh, that's pretty.
yeah, that
Is pretty.
one of the characteristics of being so far north is I think I took that around, I don't know, 9:30, 10 in the morning, like towards the very end of the show when it had gotten to be almost December.
Days got shorter.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Great. Tell me about the hardest day. What was the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, the hardest day, I'm trying not to spoil anything here. Let's just say that the design of the show was set up so that the camps would interface with each other. And sometimes that would be in a positive way, and sometimes that would be in a negative way. And this day in particular was in a negative way. And these the people from Alpha Camp paid a visit to the people in Baker Camp, and a lot was going on that day. Joe had the day off, which was his first and I think only day off of the show at this point, and it required a lot of travel for me to go from the river back up to Baker Camp, which was up a
Mud cliff.
Yeah, up a mud cliff.
Really difficult mud cliff.
Yeah.
Not an easy one.
And not only was it not easy, there was obstacles, which there was
literally
Devil's
like a
Club everywhere.
30-foot sprint up a cliff.
Right,
It was
a 30-foot sprint up a cliff with little stalks that had thorns on them called Devil's Club, which if they stuck you, you were guaranteed to have an infection from it, essentially, because the thorns embed themselves within your skin. How many times did you have to have?
I don't know. I'm used to Devil's Club.
Yeah. He's immune.
Doesn't do anything.
So it was just running back and forth up a mud cliff with the Nova on that I would as gracefully as possible sling it around my back by the shoulder strap and then just try to stay out of the way of the action. But yeah, if you watch the show, that's one of the big turning points, which a lot of online commenters have strong opinions about.
Okay.
I remember I didn't think about it until now, but my hardest day was within the first or second week when the storm came. We got a storm that didn't let up for a lot of days straight. And we as crew were promised once the camps would be selected that there would be infrastructure or tents for us to be able to
within
be
the first
adjacent
3 days
to the camps
was
so
the
that we could
promise.
not be in the rain. It didn't quite happen like that. And so we got pretty exposed to a lot. And how do I say this? We got to a point where we had to ask the contestants if we could take shelter with them. So I was asking people who were living out in the rainforest, please let me have some warmth. So we were in a bad spot. And I think it was that night where one of the camera crews wasn't picked up. They were left.
Yeah.
They didn't make it. They were left overnight, and they had to stay in a shelter for several hours until logistics, until somebody figured it out, and then they were brought back to a boat and warmed, but they were pretty shook. So, yeah, we had a couple moments where we got cold, but yeah, I forgot all about that.
Wow. So tell me also about the food. I mean, we're talking 4-star restaurants, 5-star restaurants.
Aaron, take it.
Oh.
I can't.
My
I
goodness.
can't.
I mean, it was...
Sandwich. Talk about breakfast.
Yeah. I mean, I kept the streak alive for the breakfast biscuit sausage thing there for a while, but a lot of times you would just see shucked
You eat
sausage
half of it,
patties laying around the
Oh,
PO.
same thing every single day.
Yeah.
There's no chance of it being changed.
Right.
And if you don't eat it, you're in the cold, in
You
the
have
rain
to.
all day. So you have to eat this food.
I got back here after 2 months, and some friends wanted to take me out to dinner, and they were like, "Where do you want to go?" I was like, "Vegetable."
fresh food.
Yeah.
Any vegetable.
We went to Westfield. I was like, "Oh, thank God, I can have a sprout."
We had these lunches were like a sandwich that got rained on. It's like,
Oh.
what is this? It was bad.
Sure. Yeah, it was. The contestants weren't the only ones surviving. I think.
Worms. Did you guys? I saw somebody eating worms in the trailer.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah. Delicious.
Yeah.
So Dan says, nice job designing the system. Are you using the second set of cans in the day one pick to audition the transmitter and ERX or something else?
Yeah, very astute observation there. I made it very clear to everyone that I wanted to make sure that there were cans always on the Nova, so the cans didn't leave the Nova. So I'd have the cans on the Nova as well as the URX can, and de-rigging, that sort of thing would take such a long time that I was like, I'll be the sound AD here.
This is before we discovered earbuds,
Yeah.
Oh.
which were a huge improvement.
Yeah.
So it was not for listening to your Spotify. Was there cell coverage out there? Or? No.
No. At one point, I found a single patch of beach that I could either send or receive a text message if you stood still for 5 or 10 minutes straight.
Wow.
I found a spot.
Wow. I
Everyone
never
was
found
very,
that spot.
whoa.
You never told me about that spot.
I didn't want anyone else crowding my
Secret.
spot.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dan, for your question.
Yeah.
How
Good one.
often did you use the stereo option on the ZMTX or the camera link? Asks Sage.
Never. We stayed in XR the whole time.
Never
Yeah.
clip.
Yeah. And yeah, we didn't do any kind of double miking.
Something
or
we
anything
did
like
funny
that.
though was because the QRX is 2 channels, it would we would always pick up program on it. But if you're doing an interview away from the sound package, we would tune the QRX into whichever
Single mode.
actor they're talking to, so
Right.
they would still be directly tuned into the talent.
And were you, got it, so you were transmitting mono on the camera link.
Mono on the camera link to the QRX, but with the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
channel
yeah,
of the
yeah.
QRX, we would tune that in to a talent.
Yeah. Thanks
or
for
if it
clearing that
was,
up.
or if it was completely, sometimes we would tune it just into 2 talent if it was nowhere near anybody. Cumbersome, but doable.
Right. And what kind of cameras were they using for this? Was it a larger
Sony's?
ENG format or?
They were full size. I think they were Sony's.
Yeah, they were big boy
Well, I
cameras.
remember they had
but
the A7S's. So
They were
it makes me
A7Ss,
think
but
it
I-
must have been Sony's on
it's
the big ones.
almost been 2 years, so
Yeah, it must have been Sony's.
Cool. All right, but big ENG
Yep.
camera mount. Man, awful. Okay.
Yeah.
So
ideal for muddy conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, ideal. Perfect. Exactly. So Glenn Sanders, who I think you probably know.
Oh, I heard of that
says-
guy.
Yeah, I heard of that guy. Glenn from Zaxcom says, thanks for sharing. Very cool. And Evar, I think we did answer this question, but we could go back and find that. What was your go-to lav rig? So just to review, these were exposed 60/60s and 40/60s.
Yeah, we used the Bumblebee mounts with the lav inside with safety clips or safety pins that it would attach to clothing. Generally, they would be towards the top of their coats, and then we would take top stick and wrap it around the very top there where those, the circular part of the safety pin is, and then put a rye coat over cover over the whole thing, and then stick it on them.
Which, believe it or not, is perfect.
Yeah.
It
They
And
held up really
This was
well.
exposed, right? I mean, it was like you couldn't
As much
hide
as
it.
possible.
on the
Yeah.
outside of the jackets, yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, because otherwise, underneath a rain jacket,
Yeah,
you're
so,
just
so
you're gonna
you
get
so you
nothing.
navigate the
I mean-
best spot you can.
Do you have a name for this? Like a custom? Is it the Chandler?
Yeah,
is
we
it the
called it
Pfeil?
Steve.
Steve.
Yeah.
I like it.
Put a
Very
Steve
good.
on them, I'd always say.
Very nice. Excellent. Yoko Noise asks, with all these environmental and technical challenges, how much effective time of recording do you have per day in your cards? And also, congrats for the mission accomplished and that you're alive.
Yeah, we made it.
From Warsaw. involved.
Thank you so much for the kind words. We recorded 24 hours a day. There was no
It's pretty much all usable.
Yeah, there was no moment when obviously when we were powered down to change the card out. That was the only moment where
So
we weren't
it's
recording.
all day, every day, and
52,
watch the
52
show.
days straight, I think is.
Yep.
Yeah, if you watch the show, it has a counter on days there.
It's insane how through these conditions how good it sounds. It's
Thanks,
bonkers.
Post. They
It's
really
bonkers.
did
Yeah,
a
it must
great
be
job.
Post.
Yeah. Because there was a lot of muffling that would happen, and inevitably we would get in and we'd be like, hey, can you unzip 3 inches, please? And we kind of go through that. And there were some casts that were underprepared. So their wardrobe was a lot more challenging than others. A lot of the ones who had the more robust shells, we could just kind of put the mic right here. And it would be, you'd see a little furry bit there if you look closely on a lot of the shots.
And those DPA mics, I mean, they are waterproof.
They're waterproof.
Yeah.
They're great.
Mhm.
They're
great.
amazing.
They're designed for it.
Yeah.
One story I want to bring up, because you touched on it briefly, that not only were you transmitting, but you were recording when you weren't transmitting. So that was overnight.
Sure.
And then were there any days where you didn't have to work, and what was going on those days?
We were only down for one. The shoot was only down for one day.
I think there was a couple days actually where we had to take a down day because of, I wasn't
Was there more than just?
above my pay grade as to why.
Oh, I thought there was just one.
Yeah, I can't remember. And anyway, what Nick was referring to is there was a lot of colluding that happened off screen between cast members.
Early in the morning.
Yeah.
Yell across the river before the crew shows up.
That happened, and there was also like very clandestine meetings where it would be early in the morning, but they would venture way down into the estuary, almost out of bounds, and have a meeting that was not captured, unfortunately, by video, but we were always recording. So the showrunner Grant was like, "Hey, can you get me that, because we think something happened that morning, because I think the bear guard noticed them leaving, or not leaving, but because they had to always be escorted, but they noticed something was happening." So we were able to provide that audio so that our producers were never out of the loop in terms of what was happening between their cast.
So they could have a first-hand account as if they were there, and then story produce
right
based on that.
Yeah, it wasn't hearsay as to what the cast, whether or not the cast was a reliable narrator or not as to what had happened there.
Right, because if they're colluding with each other, they're probably going to try and pull something over on you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
How did you mentally prepare for going into this? Like, did you know it was going to be as physically grueling as it was? And how did you psych yourself up for it?
I knew it was going to be a challenge. And I was really just thinking about, okay, how much research can I do about this area? How much can I pick Joe's brain about what it takes to survive in these parts? Just a quick pro tip for anybody who's going to be doing anything in that part of the world: boot dryers. You are not going to have a good time, and you might wind up with trench foot if you don't have a boot dryer. The things that he recommended to us were, it was the best part of my day, putting on dry boots every morning. Because even if you weren't actually getting water over the top of your boots, and these boots were basically almost 2 feet high, even if that didn't happen, your feet sweat and they're waterproof, so it's not going anywhere. So the boot dryers were a huge deal. But the mental preparations were basically doing as much research as possible. And then I really prioritized sleep. I was pretty much a homebody when we weren't shooting. I was trying to sleep as much as possible because I knew that I didn't want to get into a sleep backlog. What about you, Joe?
I was very excited for this job.
Yeah.
Not in the slightest bit afraid of the water. I was excited for how crappy it might be.
You were excited for how crappy it might be. Okay.
I was just thinking, how do we not destroy all this gear? That to me was the how do you protect the gear in a way that's still practically useful?
Yeah.
Like you can't just throw a tarp over everything.
Right.
So that was the complicated part, is what do you bring? How do you stay comfortable and safe? But no, for me, this is like I take my gear and I pre-waterproof it. I take everything that can break down and I start whittling it away with a knife and then adding some, glue to the weak spots. And to me, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point too, I'm mainly a dock guy, and for them to come knocking and give me the opportunity to do this, it really stretched some muscles that I hadn't stretched in a long time, and it felt really good to know the right tool for the jobs and to get them in position and get them on a truck 2 weeks in advance, and then to have everything we needed out there. It felt very satisfying.
And so let's. One thing we talked about before, you did mention having 20 transmitters for 16 people, 5 Novas. Can you just talk about what you learned about the importance of backups and how it felt? Because you mentioned one of the things you were proud of is that there was no audio downtime. So just tell that story again, because it's a nice story.
It really, it's part of. I think it's something that doesn't get touched on enough in our industry, is this idea of anticipation. The more you can anticipate the problems you're going to face, the more you can understand what the next scene's about, the better you can get the tools that you need in position to where they need to be.
That's
so
such a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it definitely. I don't want to gender it, but it separates the adults from the children in our world. And I think that what we wound up doing was we had a spare for everything. We had 2 sets of cables. For every cable that was in a bag in the Nova, we had a spare cable in their run bag. We had a spare transmitter, a spare mic, batteries for the whole day. And that was maybe something that we didn't mention either. There was no going back to the PO. Once we took everything out in the morning, we went to war with the sound gear we had. That was it.
It seemed like a lot.
Right.
But then there were those moments where, we have a spare SMA to BNC cable.
Right.
Got it.
We didn't have a spare Nova at each camp,
right,
unfortunately, but there's always season 2.
So that leads me to my next and last question is, lessons learned. Is there anything that you would do different, on season 2, or any lessons that you would take or have taken forward into your current and future projects?
Go for it.
Well, something that I'm toying with now is UHF repeating. I bought a little Pelican case that I want to be able to receive and rebroadcast. And something Aaron was talking about, designing the whole system, was also about how do you broadcast far? How do you expand where you can cover? And so that's something that I'd like to get a lot of experience with, is building infrastructure that you could throw up in a tree, connect a receiving and transmitting antenna, and take a signal and reuse that signal and feed sounds to where people are. Because when you're in a place like this, communication was everything, and we all had walkie-talkies, but we were limited. And only the Bear Guards had the VHF walkies that could actually reach the mothership where the real decisions were made. So being able to extend communications to me is something I want to learn a lot more about. And this show made it very obvious how valuable that could be. Like Mandel creating the internet.
Yeah, MandelNet, we called it.
MandelNet.
Yeah. I think it's pretty much the same for me. I remember pitching that kind of those setups, and I was like saying to Peter, hey, I'm going to try to throw this out there to them and see if it comes back, and maybe we can have more conversations about it than about a repeating system to have more real-time monitoring. But wasn't in the budget, so we made it work with what we had out there. I'm not sure I would do a lot different in terms of the gear that I would pick.
I wouldn't change any of it.
Yeah, I really wouldn't. I think what we had and the system that we had in place was ideal.
Great. Awesome. So Outlast available now on Netflix, picked up for season 2. We'll see what happens. So the audio team, Aaron Chandler, Joe Pfeil, thank you so much. Brandon Johnson. Sorry you're not here, Brandon, but thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure, really interesting to hear about your experience. Check out the show so you can see what happened in front of the cameras. So for those of you watching at home, thank you for your questions. You can watch this video and more at gothamsound.tv. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. And as always, if you have questions, you can email us at info@gothamsound.com. And again, thank you so much for watching.